Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Rivian. Rivian's all-electric performance SUV prototype will go into production, says the CEO. Expect the eagerly anticipated EV to arrive during the second half of the decade. Rivian's lineup is set to get much more needed injection of fun. The EV maker CEO, RJ Scaringe, has confirmed that the rally-like R3X variant prototype the brand showed off earlier this year will go into production, according to The Verge. So that's not a surprise, as we well know. What is a surprise is that it will be launched before its base model, R3. So clearly, Rivian must be seeing much more demand for the R3X, more than the R3 base model, of course. And it must be quite substantial for them to decide, okay, we need to do the R3X first. There must be quite a difference. And I must be honest, if I were to choose between the R3, the R3X, or even the R2, I would probably go with the R3X. No doubt. At least this is what I would go with right now in life. And I think for a lot of people, it's probably somewhat similar. I've actually seen very similar impressions online that people are really appreciating the R3X. So earlier this year, Rivian outlined the ambitious plan to expand its lineup in the coming years. The company, which launched the R1T in 2021 and R1S in 2022, unveiled 3 new models that it hopes start selling before the end of the decade. Up first was the R2, the new R2, and the mid-size SUV, which was followed weeks later by the subcompact R3 and R3X. This is something that they needed. The brand needed a plan for the long term. They needed a way to, attract new buyers. They needed slightly more affordable models. And I believe this is definitely going to be, the correct direction that Rivian needs to go. And they've proven that because obviously these vehicles, they were welcomed really nicely. They're obviously looking just like a Rivian vehicle, as you would expect, but in a new compact, small form, almost small form, but it's definitely got this retro kind of vibe as well. So for a lot of people to see something like that being revived in such a modern aesthetic, it's actually quite pleasing. So while the R2, which compete with the SUVs such as the Porsche Macan and the BMW X3, will probably be more important to the company's bottom line, it was the R3 and R3X that got the enthusiasts talking. This is what got the big attention from the audience and media. Because the R2 still looks so similar to the R1S, there's very little differentiation except for the price, of course. The price was a huge difference, a difference that we much needed. So the smaller models were just different from anything Rivian has produced up until now. It was just different from anything we've seen from any automaker or any electric vehicle manufacturer in the recent years. Because it's definitely brought back something from the 80s, it's like bringing back something from the 80s, but certainly modernize it. So this would be good for Rivian. This is definitely the path that they want to take. And I always say this company, if they continue to do what they're doing, they're on the path of success. They're in a way, this company will not fail at what they're doing. Yes, they do need to manage costs very well. They are losing a lot of money as they produce these vehicles. So optimizing for efficiency is the best thing that they can do right now. But also attracting new investors. And I believe they just did that recently with VW. They announced a huge partnership with VW to build their own software together and architecture together to share between the two companies. All while VW is investing, I think, anywhere from 3 to 5 billion into Rivian. That's quite substantial. And the Rivian shares definitely had a huge turnaround because once any big automaker starts partnering up with Rivian or partnering up with any electric vehicle automaker, it shows some promise. But why wouldn't it? Rivian makes brilliant vehicles. You rarely hear complaints about Rivian vehicles. You rarely, if ever, hear complaints about Rivian vehicles. So this is what I mean when I say, this brand, it can't fail, But why can't it fail? They definitely have their own audience. They've definitely found their own audience, and they're just going to continue expanding that. If you look at how much money this company is generating already on a quarterly basis, 1.2 billion this year, 1.2 billion in the first quarter of 2024. First quarter of 2024, 1.2 billion. Put this in comparison, last year in 2023, first quarter was 661 billion, almost half of that. Dare I say, almost half of that. So the fact that they've had such a strong start to this year is a positive sign. That's a positive sign. Now, obviously, we want those Q2 numbers. We're looking towards Q3 as we're in Q3 at the moment, and then we're looking towards Q4. At the end of this year, Rivian could end up generating well over 5 billion in revenue. That's quite impressive because this company market cap is only 16.1 billion. So you mean to tell me that this company can make the value of the company back in like 3 years? Yeah, that's an undervalued company, without doubt. So when you look at the amount of money that they're losing, yeah, they're losing quite a lot of money because the EBITDA was down by quite a lot. 1 billion, 1.09 billion in Q1. So if they can continue optimizing for efficiency, this is what we hope for. But it's still a huge improvement compared to Q4 2023, where the EBITDA was down 2.79 billion. Free cash flow 1.52 billion in Q1 this year. So without doubt, the more vehicles they produce is like the more money they're losing. It's also the more money they're making, but to cover up for that difference is really difficult because what would be really nice for Rivian right now is if we can get to a stage where we are cash flow break even. So you can see the debt is going up, little by little. Debt is at 4.78 billion, capital lease 709 million, while the cash is going down quite dramatically at 7.8 billion. So for how much longer they can sustain themselves, by building this much vehicle and making this much loss, it's hard to say. So this is why I believe that the most important thing is to keep optimizing for efficiency and of course to cut back on costs. The more efficiently this company can be run is the less money they'll lose. Because I think it's quite obvious now that this company clearly has a market for itself, and that market is going to continue to expand. Let's look at this. EV startup Rivian CEO says that the cars will never get Apple Play. Yeah, I agree. They don't need it. Rivian has invested quite a lot in building their own software, something that Tesla has also done. And just look at how useful it has become for Tesla just to have their own software. It has really, created something quite unique. Imagine if Apple didn't create their own software. Then they'd probably be relying on a company like Microsoft, and I think that Apple creating its own software was probably one of the most important things they've ever done as a company because it separates them from others. And that's always a good thing because you always want to do things your own way. And the Apple way has proven to be a really good way. Plus, Apple has been able to invest in their ecosystem of softwares and technology. Tesla wants to do the same, and so does Rivian, and I completely understand that. So despite being required for many car buyers, Rivian is one of the few automakers that doesn't use Apple CarPlay. Rivian founder and CEO confirmed Monday the automaker won't be using CarPlay in its vehicles anytime in the near future. And that's because they don't need to. They can still see that there's great demand without Apple CarPlay, And if Rivian continues to develop their software, I remember when it was just first introduced in the Rivian models, they were just being delivered. There was definitely like some lags in the beginning, but they've improved it so much throughout the recent years. So a round of applause to Rivian. RJ Scaringe likened Rivian using Apple CarPlay to Apple using Windows as an operating system instead of developing its own software. That's hilarious. That's exactly what I just said. And I'm telling you, I love it when I'm thinking alike to a company that I'm invested in. Because I am investing in Rivian, just a little bit, but I like it when they think the same way I'm thinking, and I like it when I think the same way they're thinking. Yes, you want to develop your own software, your own operating system. That's what OS means. This is what Apple has invested so much into, and it's been very, very, rewarding. Tesla's done the same. It's been very rewarding for Tesla as well. Why shouldn't Rivian? The automakers who have to rely on Apple CarPlay is like relying on Microsoft. Eventually you're gonna become too much self-reliant on Microsoft. You're not gonna separate yourself in a meaningful way. What Rivian is doing is what Rivian is doing is similar to what Apple was doing in 2007 with the iPhone. It's like something new, and it's like we're gonna create our own software. We're not gonna use Android. We're not gonna use someone else's software. So the CEO was saying, and I quote, "We have a great partnership with Apple. As much as I love their products, there's a reason that ironically is very consistent with Apple ethos for us to want to control the ecosystem." That's what I mean. Rivian wants to control their own ecosystem. Apple wants to control their own ecosystem. You know, Tesla needs to control their own ecosystem. When I have a company thinking like this, they won't fail. Because damn it, they do things different. They look at the bigger picture and they say, you know what, we're looking 10, 20 years in the future of, you know, what it's really going to mean. Do we really want to rely on Apple that much? It's not a good thing. If you rely on Apple that much, it might as well Apple just buy Rivian. Now, if Apple buys Rivian, I'd be fine with Apple putting the software on Rivian. That's fine. Of course they would. You know, at that point, Rivian would be in the Apple ecosystem, but it's not. Rivian wants to become the next Tesla, the next Apple. They want to become their own thing, and they can and they will. They have the full potential to it. So I understand exactly what the CEO is saying, and I agree 100%. So this article is basically saying, essentially, Scoringe doesn't want Apple in control of what he describes as Rivian ecosystem. I wouldn't either. Why would you want someone in charge of your company's, you know, ecosystem, your company's entire software? So without that company, you're useless. You're nothing. Oh my goodness. No, 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 no. We will not do that. Now, a lot of automakers have to rely on Apple CarPlay. That's a different story. That's their problem. You know, no one's forcing you, but that's their problem. And you know, people do prefer, people who are buying cars, especially people with an iPhone, they do prefer, you know, if it has Apple CarPlay. But if it doesn't, is that really the end of the world? You can still get maps, you can still get navigation, you can still connect via Bluetooth. It's not the end of the world. You know, there's still access to the car's OS via your phone. One other thing I do One other thing I do want to touch on before we end this video is Rivian's legal battle with Tesla got more interesting. I didn't know there was one. Apparently there is. The legal battle between Rivian and Tesla got more interesting. Rivian requested to dismiss Tesla's lawsuit was denied by California state judge on Tuesday, paving the way for the trial. Rivian's legal battle with Tesla began in 2020 after Tesla filed a lawsuit claiming Rivian stole trade secrets by hiring its former employees. Hold on a minute, Tesla. Don't you do the exact same thing? Doesn't Apple do the exact same thing? Every company in America, software companies especially, do the exact same thing. You hire from other people company all the time. So when you say trade secrets, what exactly is trade secrets? So the trial is going to be quite interesting, you know, because what exactly is going to be considered as trade secrets? You know, if Tesla has patterns and, you know, they don't allow anyone else to use it, okay. But if you have patterns that others are allowed to use, then you don't have a case. If there is no pattern and there is no infringement, and what Rivian has simply done, you know, Rivian is allowed to be inspired by Tesla and inspired by Apple. You can't sue them for inspiration. Unless it's a clear copy. So when you say trade secrets, it's going to be interesting to see which. It's also very interesting that Tesla would file this lawsuit. What has Rivian done that's hurting Tesla business so much that Tesla has to file a lawsuit? It's be very interesting to find out a bit more. So the lawsuit states that it's discovered a disturbing pattern of former workers departing for Rivian. That's not trade secrets. That's called being competitive in offering people work, Tesla. They don't want to work for you anymore, so you're going to sue their new employer? That's hilarious, by the way, because Tesla's complained that Apple has done this for years. But Tesla, you do the exact same thing. Tesla, don't you think we notice that the Tesla software is oddly very similar to an Apple software? Don't you think we know that you hire people who used to work for Apple and they were inspired by the Apple software to create the Tesla ecosystem and software? Don't you think that we know Tesla? If you're suing Rivian for trade secrets, Apple should be suing you for trade secrets too. My goodness. Don't you think we're idiots? I noticed a long time ago. My goodness. Anyway, it added these employees are supposedly stealing Tesla trade secrets, confidential and proprietary information. Proprietary information as well. According to the lawsuit, Rivian has encouraged those thefts, even though Rivian is well aware of Tesla employees' confidential obligations. Wait, what? You're saying Rivian has encouraged. What do you mean encouraged? Okay, now it gets even more interesting. So we want to know, why would Tesla say Rivian encourages? is Rivian saying like, okay, if you work for Tesla or another automaker, that's a benefit. You know, Tesla, that's not called encouraging. That's saying you have experience. When I go for a job in a bank, they ask me, "Have you worked for another bank?" Not so I still trade secrets. They're not encouraging me. They're asking me, "Do I have experience working in that environment?" Oh my goodness. So Santa Clara Superior Judge denied Rivian's request to dismiss the lawsuit on Tuesday, which means that they might have found some substantial evidence. I hope this isn't the case where Rivian is actually stealing confidential information. If it's based on inspiration by Tesla design, that's acceptable, but it has to be inspiration. It can't just be a clear copy, you know? So Tesla evidence established that some of Rivian's employees were less thoroughly investigated and not disciplined, the judge wrote. According to the tentative ruling, the evidence is enough to warrant a trial. Okay, so interesting. The employees were less thoroughly investigated and not disciplined. My goodness, this is quite a rattle. So Rivian legal battle with Tesla set for trial July 20th. The hearing is set for Wednesday, July 24th. That was yesterday, before the judge finalizes order. Check back soon for more detail on Rivian legal battle with Tesla. The case is Tesla Inc. versus Rivian Automotive Inc. Since the lawsuit, Rivian announced to adopt Tesla NACS connector. Are you going to sue them for that as well, Tesla? CEO Ajay Scarinz has praised Tesla Super Network, saying Rivian thrives for similar uptime and reliability. A few Rivian owners already receive adapters after shipments begin in April. You know, when I think Tesla, you know, for this lawsuit, I think Tesla might be talking a lot more about software, because a lot of a lot of the technology based on Tesla vehicles, I think it's open source. I think I might be incorrect, but you know, back in the early days, you know, Elon always talked about making sure these patterns are open for other automakers to use. That must not include the software. Because let's be honest, this really sounds like a software kind of discrepancy. That's what it really sounds like. So I do want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about what we've spoke about so far? Thank you for watching. Subscribe to see more. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you in our next video. Peace.